Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? First of all, thank you very much for attending. My name is Mark Sneider. I'm owner and president of RSW US, Launch, and RSW Agency Search. Hope you're all having a great day so far. Kind of rainy and cold here in Cincinnati. Um, Obviously, we all know that inbound is all the rage. I mean, we hear about it all the time. I was at HubSpot's inbound convention, and there were 10,000 marketers there and 2,500 agencies there, all wanting to absorb as much as they could about inbound. And what follows today is a presentation I gave at Inbound, and its purpose was to tell the audience that the in inbound certainly isn't out, but the in inbound needs a little out or outbound to make it work for the agency world. Before I started the presentation out in Boston, I asked for a show of hands, asked folks how many of the people in attendance were using inbound as a part of their agency new business development program. And no surprise, given it was an inbound conference, virtually everybody raised their hand. I asked folks to keep their hands up of those using inbound. I asked them how many were also using proactive outreach as part of their effort to complement their inbound program, and only a handful of them were using both. And it's kind of what I expected going into the presentation, and it really is kind of the focus of today's presentation and the presentation that I gave in Boston on the importance of proactive prospecting, combining that with inbound for agency new business success. And so, it's really how we, I see this picture is covering up things, so I apologize about that. But it's really how we built up our business: extensive use of inbound strategies and tactics, complemented by consistent use of proactive outreach to folks like yourself. It helped us build up a business that today is close to 4 million strong. We have 40 well-paid, happy, hardworking employees who, I believe are reasonably well dedicated to making it all work. And the growth has been steady and solid. We've been growing at double digits since we started the business 10 years ago. And RSW US, our outsourced lead generation business development group for marketing service agencies, is now the number one firm in this space. And we've developed a product called Launch. It's kind of the light version of RSW, so we're giving smaller agency options that they never had before. And to help diversify the revenue stream, we've created a unique model to help marketers find new agencies, agencies that are mostly small to mid-size that wouldn't otherwise be found, which has led us to managing well over 30 searches since starting the business in 2010. So all in all, it's been a great ride. We've got great people, great results, great clients, and overall, it's been a lot of fun. And what I'm here to do today is to tell you that you can build it too, but not with inbound alone. But before we talk about how to build it, we need to face some realities, some that might get in the way, and some that are just the basic truths about the industry we all operate in today. So the first is, you all basically do the same stuff, and I know that's not, completely true down to the nth degree, but I know, some of you are better than others, but at the end of the day, you all produce nice work, and you're all generally creative. And this cold, hard fact makes it hard for marketers a lot of the times to really see the inherent differences in what you do. And I'll never forget a presentation I gave back in 2007, shortly after starting the company. There were 20 agencies present. I was armed with overhead transparencies, and Assume that some of you remember those. Probably a number of you don't, which makes me feel a little bit old. But I asked each agency to define their elevator speech. And what happened was they all basically came back and gave me the same stuff, that they were all strategic agencies. They were great partners. They'd go the extra mile. They were a lot of fun to work with. And it really was kind of scary. I think 19 of the 20 agencies came back with elevator speeches that looked very much the same. And I was with an agency the other day, a new client, that said what I hear from agencies all the time, that the blog really isn't doing anything for us. We write it, but not sure that anyone's really looking at it. And that's really problem number one that you have to work your way through. Just building it and doing nothing with it isn't a winning strategy. So, because at the end of the day, inbound is passive when it comes to agency prospecting. Sure, it has some SEO value, which is great, and that's really important, but it does nothing if you're doing nothing with it. And it will really do nothing if all you do is dabble in it every now and then. If that's all you're going to do, you might as well hang it up and not embarrass yourself with the most recent post dating as far back as 2013. And, we see that way too often, that there's just, not a consistent effort, and agencies treating it more like an inbound or a part-time sport rather than a full-time job. And I know it's fun to write about the agency's party and the cool things going on around the firm, but I say save that for Facebook. It's a great place to show off your personality. And if you're going to blog about things your readers will want to read, not things that scream, just look at me and look at how much fun we are. And you have systems for other things in your firm. So why not create a system for how you manage your content development at the agency? Too often there are no controls, no process, and it ends up being more of a free-for-all than a coordinated, well-oiled effort. And this is all so critically important, because if you ignore it and you do nothing with it, you're going to lose out on a huge opportunity to influence those that you want the most. And we know through our surveys, the surveys that we conduct every year among marketers and agencies, which, by the way, are available on our site for free, some great insights from marketers, that 90% of marketers are reading agency blogs. But I seriously doubt that they're reading the blogs that are just sitting idle and collecting dust. And marketers are reading blogs to learn. They want agencies that understand their space and can impart great knowledge. It doesn't mean you have to dedicate yourself to one cause, only one specialty, but it means that you need to take a stand and own something, because otherwise you're going to look just like all the rest. Because at the end of the day, marketers really do think you all do the same stuff. We see it in our surveys year after year. The things that set good agencies apart from the not so good are those agencies that can bring real value and thinking and strategy to the table to help their clients move forward in a different and better and smarter way. And marketers tell us in our surveys that the number one reason why they leave their agency is because they aren't doing these things. They aren't bringing smart strategic thinking. They aren't bringing new ideas. They aren't being proactive in how they're managing the business. Because at the end of the day, your agency is going to die if all you do is aspire to be like a Crispin. They're a needle in a haystack, which means you've got to work harder and smarter and longer to bring the business home. So despite some of these challenges, which I believe can all be overcome, you're in a much better position than I was when I started this business. I had nothing, and you clearly have something to start with. When I started RSW, the concept had not proved itself out here. It had been around for 10 years in the UK, but clearly, and I learned pretty quickly that the UK is no US. They're much nicer over there, so getting in front of marketers is a heck of a lot easier than it is here. And I walked into a market full of used car salespeople. There was a Brit that started a firm here after failing in the UK, a firm called Flatiron that used unemployed actors that sounded great on the phone and not much more than that, and a bunch of telemarketing firms that didn't understand the agency world. And so for all practical purposes, the category really didn't exist. And as I was also at a bit of a disadvantage because my customer base, you agencies, were riding a wave of strong economic success in the early 2000s. But the good news is you have something to work with. You have a market, you have known needs, and you have past successes. And it's all great, but let me remind you again, what's key here is that you let your work, your content, your thinking sit idle, and nothing will happen. Marketers don't have the time. They simply aren't going to Google search their way to a new agency. And why should they when they have hundreds of agencies calling them every day? I get recommendations from marketers all the time when I'm running searches, agency searches for them, folks they've talked to, met with, heard about. So you have to ask yourself, what's my space? 88% of marketers want to work with an agency that has some specialty. Could be category, could be technical skill, could be expertise in a specific platform. And you have to ask yourself, what's going to get a marketer to want to see me again? Being smart and strategic isn't a point of difference. It's clearly how you win and keep the account, but it's not how you grab the marketer's attention. So the $1 million question is, what are you going to do given all the obstacles and roadblocks, and where do you start? So, you can't be everything to everyone when you prospect. You've got to think about where you have the most expertise, again, either sector or otherwise, and make that the focus right out of the block. And build your program around it. Blog about it, write about it, PR it, speak about it, attend conferences that focus on it, build lists of people and companies that live in that space. We as an agency, our own, agency, if you want to call us that, decided to own and live in the agency client relationship space, and that's all we do. I remember 7 years ago, I tried to venture off and expand into other industries, and I hated it, and it was a huge distraction for me and for the company. Oftentimes agencies are afraid to focus, thinking that they'll have to turn their entire world in the direction of their specialty. Well, you don't. We know it from our surveys. Most marketers tell us that an agency doesn't need their firm to dedicate themselves entirely to a practice to be considered a specialist. Create tabs on your site that lead prospects to, specific specialty areas. So, go for it. Make that leap, dedicate yourself to it, to one or a few different spaces, and try and not worry about what others are thinking. So the next step is really to build the plan, put a calendar together, again, just like you do for your client. And as you put that plan together, think about the following things. You have to use multiple platforms, including mailings. I don't care if you're a digital firm or a PR firm or a social media firm, lay the foundation of your story in a space that very few agencies pursue. It's not only a practice that we implement for our agency clients, it's a practice that we put in place behind our own prospecting efforts for RSWs. So, think about your own world and how much mail you get relative to how many emails you get every day. And if you can make an impact in a space that's relatively uncluttered, as we say, to at least begin setting the table and building some awareness for your agency, it's a great place to start. And you have to think about your own marketing just like you think about your client's marketing. There has to be some integration of platforms. They have to be able to work together. And make sure your messaging is consistent across your different points of outreach. We create what we call a communication strategy or brand story at the start of each of our engagements with agency clients. It's basically a one-page document that defines our agency client in as compelling and as differentiating a way possible. It's something that I'm responsible for as we ramp up programs. And this becomes a foundation off of which all going forward communication is built. So, what you say in front of a prospect when you're standing there presenting to them, or you're on the phone with them in a 30 to 45-minute conversation with them, is different than what you're going to say to them when you initially make that outreach. I say we've got 5 seconds to 2 minutes to capture a prospect's attention. So we need to really boil it down to the essence of the reasons to believe why somebody wants to sit down and talk to you. And once you define that, then let's start seeing that message appear on all communication tied to that new business development outreach. And think about consistency of outreach. As I said before, don't stop and start, because it will stop if you do stop. If you take a hiatus for 2 months and decide you're going to kind of walk away during a November, December time period when marketers are planning and looking to spend end of year budgets and beginning to formulate plans for next year, and you walk away from their consideration set for 2 months, who's to say that other agencies aren't going to be popping in there trying to grab their attention? So even if it's low level of outreach and keeping the name in front of people, make sure you're consistently doing it each and every month, throughout the life of your program, which really should have no end of life. And create a methodology for your prospecting program and stick. Sorry about that. And stick to it. It takes time. It's by no means an overnight sensation. And create and formulate sort of a process that you can follow. Doesn't mean you can't zig and zag off of that process occasionally. I like to say we have a McDonald's-like methodology here at RSW, but we're also flexible enough where we can work around that and capitalize on new opportunities. So create a methodology for whoever's doing the prospecting in your organization and make sure they're sticking to it. And when you develop content, push it everywhere. SlideShare, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google+. Leave no stone unturned. Try PRing it. I mean, when we put out a piece of content like a new survey, we're going to create an ebook around it. We're going to do a webinar around it. We're going to push it into SlideShare and LinkedIn and Facebook. We're going to post about it numerous times. And it is consuming and it takes time, but you've got to be able to really capitalize on all of the channels, because you never know where your prospects are going to be. Including Twitter. I failed to mention Twitter. So, use all the available channels that you can. And I'm a huge believer in redundancy and a huge believer in frequency. I'll sometimes have clients or even sometimes new business directors ask, or say, well, we just sent them the mailer. Why are we sending them an electronic copy of the mailer? Well, maybe they haven't seen the mailer, or maybe they're not one who is receptive to mailings and they're more attuned to something electronic. So, hit them with, not in an obnoxious way by any means, but certainly they're, recognize that they've got a lot of things going on and you've got to be redundant and you've got to be there with some measure of frequency. On average at RSW, we only get 20% of you to open up our emails that we send you, but we'll keep trying and using different platforms in our attempts to capture your attention. So, you gotta go out there with some measure of redundancy and frequency. And I talked earlier about the build it and they won't come syndrome that many agencies face when developing blogs and doing nothing with them. The same holds true of prospecting. Just because you push something out to a prospect doesn't mean your job is done. You've got to pick up the phone and try and connect. Agencies will often tell me this too. We've tried mailers in the past and they just don't work. And then I proceed to ask them, and just what did you do after you mailed that mailer? And the response is almost always nothing. And I say to them, no wonder. Everything we push out to prospects is complemented by a call and an email, whether it's for our own efforts or for the efforts of our client program. You've got to be able to hit them cross platforms. You've got to be consistent. You've got to, be a little bit aggressive without crossing over that line. And apologize for the profanity. So if all you're doing now is a lot of nothing, you've got to get off the couch and do something. Because if all you do is sit and wait, then all you'll ultimately do is sit and wait. And sure, people are going to complain and they're going to be skeptical. They're not going to want to step up and add responsibilities. But, at the end of the day, you're either the boss of the organization, if you're listening, or you are a new business director who's central to the growth of your agency's organization. So you got to make them do it in a nice way, but you got to make them do it. And frankly, you got to live by example. Right along with your team, you need to sell and write and create and pick up that phone too. There's nothing more not motivating than working your butt off and seeing your boss or the owner of the agency kicking back and doing nothing and not making contributions or not participating in the process. Doesn't mean they have to do as much as everybody else, but good to see them engaged and reinforcing the importance of that process. So, you need to impress upon your team that as much as you believe in the power of inbound, and it is powerful, there needs to be other elements added to the mix in order to make it work. Because selling agency services is a heck of a lot more difficult than selling the services of your clients. Selling agency services is ethereal, it's complex, requires patience, and if you need to convince them further, tell them that 84% of agencies tell us that they plan on getting more competitive in 2015 and 2016. And tell them that 63% of marketers tell us that they plan on consolidating the number of agencies that they use in the coming years. So there simply are going to be fewer opportunities out there. And remind them that the bigger agencies are going after smaller pieces of the pie, which is only going to make it harder on mid and smaller firms. Nobody said this would be easy, but it's definitely not impossible if you take the right approach. So let's recap. Be proactive, okay? Be proactive. Don't just sit idly by. You've got to be a little bit aggressive. You've got to take the lead in moving your content and your ideas ahead. Be of value. Again, don't just write about yourself, but write about things that you believe your prospects are going to be interested in learning, things that are going to enhance their lives. I built up this business by giving our ideas away, sharing ways in which you agencies can help build better new business programs. And a lot of agencies, I'm guessing, have really benefited from not only the content we've pushed out, but the content that other consultants and firms have pushed out as well. So you've got to be of value to be able to help the people that you're trying to reach out to, and eventually that value is going to be recognized as thought leadership, and that thought leadership is going to translate into a recognition that maybe these guys are good guys to be working with and potentially helping me. And be consistent. Again, don't stop and start. I wrote in a blog way back when called the 3 C's: consistency of outreach, consistency of messaging, and consistency of methodology. So consistency times 3 is key in making and creating a successful new business program. And be something. You can't be everything to everybody. You've got to be something. Define your space or spaces. Again, you don't have to turn your whole agency upside down and just be one thing. You don't have to narrowcast yourself to death. Remember an agency we were working with in Ohio, we had helped them sort of define their platform as service marketers, and it was a great program. And then they decided, at the advice of a consultant, to narrow it even further, which dramatically changed the game for them. It became way too narrow-casted, and they've since had to pull themselves back out. So, define it in a way that gives you opportunities, or define certain sectors, multiple sectors that give you the ability to diversify your portfolio, but still be recognized as a specialist in that industry. And be realistic. It is the activity of being a new business director. Ask any of our new business directors here, is no easy task. So you have to be realistic in terms of the expectations. Only about 20% of our clients see closure in the first 6 months of a program. So it takes time to build up awareness for who you are. It takes time to bust through to these prospects. And so be realistic when you set your program up, and in terms of the expectations that you have of your new business director. And recognize that, inbound can't do it on its own. There are some agencies out there that have been successful with it, but as a sole means of generating leads, but inbound alone, on the whole, can't do it on its own. And frankly, outbound on its own can't do it on its own either. If all I do is call and do like the rest of the agencies out there that are just trying to pound down the marketer's door and talk about how great they are, that is not going to work. You've got to have a foundation of good thought leadership and content that sits on the inbound side of the fence, and then you've got to proactively make it active through outbound outreach. But combined, as I just said, the two can be extremely powerful tools to help build your agency's business. So be the agency that wins this game. Create a smarter program for your firm. Really, helped build our business over these last 10 years to what it is today. And frankly, I believe it can help build yours as well. So I think we had said an hour, but I always try and keep these to about a half an hour. So really appreciate your time. I really hope that the perspective here has helped and will help. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I always love talking about the business of new business and agencies and marketers. So anytime you want to talk, feel free to reach out to me. A lot of good content on our site. Feel free to visit our site and download anything you want for free. And appreciate it. You guys all have a great day, and hope to talk to you sometime. Okay, take care. Bye now.